Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about tablets. I mean, they're everywhere these days. From the iPad to the Galaxy Tab to the Microsoft Surface, it's very likely that you've used one before. These days, when you think about tablets and Microsoft, you're probably going to think of Windows 10 or maybe even Windows 8.1 as the OS that powers them. But did you know that Microsoft's endeavor into the tablet world began almost 30 years ago? About 3 years before Windows 95 was released? In today's video, we're going to be discovering the history of Microsoft's first ever tablet operating system called WinPad, and it all begins in the early 90s. Back in the summer of 1992, Microsoft was beginning a project that they felt would change the way people interacted with Windows computers. The goal of the project was to create an all-new operating system that was designed for usage on touchscreen computers, or tablets. At this time, the vast majority of computers were either desktops or laptops running MS-DOS with the possible addition of Windows 3.1. Obviously, the primary way of interacting with these systems was the keyboard and mouse, but a tablet PC, a dedicated touchscreen device not tethered to a computer, was still a concept that seemed futuristic. Microsoft wanted to turn this idea into a reality through the WinPad initiative, and that's exactly what they did. But to make this new OS possible, they needed hardware for it to run on. So the software company partnered with big name OEMs, including Motorola, Compaq, Sharp, and NEC. These OEMs would create the specialized tablet hardware needed to run the WinPad operating system. Now, I should mention that WinPad was not intended to be a replacement for a regular Windows computer, but rather an additional accessory. Think of it like a PDA. These devices were very useful, but still needed to be connected to a computer to sync and perform certain actions like sending email. So without any further ado, let's take a close look at WinPad in all of its glory. The version that I'm running here is an alpha development SDK made to work on a Windows 3.1 computer. If you're interested in checking it out yourself, check out this tutorial video that I released a few years ago. To launch the WinPad environment, we have to exit out to MS-DOS and change the directory to the newly created HHWin folder, which I believe stands for Handheld Windows. Typing Win followed by the S switch will launch us into the WinPad tablet interface. The OS will accept mouse and keyboard input, and it even shows a cursor on the screen. Because we're running this on a regular PC, the entire UI is off-center to the left, but this obviously would not occur on real tablet hardware. Also of note is the black and white color scheme. There is no color display mode available, which is because portable tablet-like displays from the early 90s were not in color. Towards the bottom of the screen, you will notice 8 menu buttons along with an arrow button. These controls enable you to launch different system applications, see what time it is, or exit the system entirely. The OS was designed with a business use in mind, so naturally, we have applications like an address book, a calendar, a mail application, a to-do list, and a notes program. When you first launch WinPad, the user is greeted with a welcome screen that discusses some of the main features of the OS. It also mentions the 2 different input methods, the on-screen keyboard and handwriting recognition. Yes, a tablet OS from the early 90s was able to support handwriting recognition. Pretty cool, right? The on-screen keyboard is, well, pretty standard, but you can tap the button on the bottom left of the keyboard to switch to the handwriting recognition mode. All you have to do is write out whatever you want, and the system will attempt to convert your writing to computerized text. Unfortunately, this can't be done very well because I have to use the mouse to write, which obviously wasn't the intended way to use this. But hey, if anyone out there is running this OS on a VM on something like a Microsoft Surface, be sure to let me know down in the comments how this works for you. Anyways, back to the bundled programs. Most of these applications have placeholder information in them. In the address book, we can see a couple of default contacts. Create a new contact by tapping the New button at the bottom of the screen, or search for an existing one using the Find button. All of the contacts are separated into 8 alphabetized groups seen on the right of the screen. Inside of the Notes app, you will see a default note called WinPad Location, which has a drawn-out map of the United States with an arrow pointing to Redmond, Washington, where Microsoft is headquartered. You can take notes in 2 ways, either by using the keyboard or drawing with the stylus. What you cannot do is use the handwriting recognition, since this is not in a text box. The Mail application is what you would expect it to be, an email client. This program was most likely intended to work in conjunction with Microsoft Outlook on a full-fledged version of Windows. You can create email messages on WinPad, but when you hit send, it simply displays a message saying that the email was moved to the outbox. Messages in the outbox would be sent when the tablet was connected to a computer running Outlook, which is again similar to how a PDA would work. We also have a to-do list, which is similar to the Notes program with the added ability of setting a priority, due date, reminder, and category. The Clock program displays the current time and allows the user to enable daylight savings time and set an alarm. I would show you the Calendar program, but it just crashes the entire system when launched. But this is to be expected. Due to this version of the software being in its alpha stage, the system can be extremely buggy at times, and this is an example of that. If we tap on the arrow on the far right, a full screen menu will pop up containing all of the other WinPad functions. A lot of the options in this menu don't work and just show error messages when executed, and some of these are developer options, which most likely were not intended to be in the final release if this OS ever had one. We also have a prototype switchboard interface, which shows the different devices that WinPad communicated with. It's also pretty neat to see the icons that Microsoft used to represent a tablet. Now all of this looks pretty cool, right? So why is it that you've likely never heard of WinPad? Well, to put it simply, the project never saw the light of day outside of Microsoft's headquarters, as it was killed off in 1994. This was due to complications that Microsoft encountered during the development process. One of the major issues was the OS that WinPad was based on. Unlike other PDA devices from the early 90s like the Apple Newton, which used a 32-bit processor, WinPad relied on the codebase of Windows 3.1, a 16-bit operating system. This posed major problems for both Microsoft and its OEM partners. With the inclusion of more advanced features like handwriting recognition, the hardware that was provided by Microsoft's OEM partners to run WinPad wasn't able to run the OS smoothly. Another major issue was the battery. Obviously, these tablets needed good batteries, able to last at the minimum most of a workday. The problem was that the battery technology Microsoft needed either was too expensive or just wasn't out there. Because of this, Microsoft unfortunately decided to kill off the entire WinPad division just over 2 years after they started it. However, it's safe to say that WinPad never really died. Microsoft used what they learned from the WinPad project to create Windows CE 2 years later in 1996, which ended up working out much better as the system was based on 32-bit technology and the required hardware was readily available at that time. Windows CE soon evolved into Windows Embedded, which still powers specialized machines to this day. Even my car's navigation system is powered by Windows Embedded. 16 years later, Microsoft released Windows 8, which took Windows tablet computers to the masses. So if you're using a tablet to watch this video, you can give thanks to WinPad. While it wasn't the first tablet project ever started, it's very likely that a tablet-based edition of Windows released today could turn out very differently had Microsoft never gone through WinPad's development process. That's all for today's video. I want to thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this one and found it interesting, be sure to give it a like and get subscribed. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video.